It is that time again. You hear the lounge music. I mean, it can only mean one thing. It's time for T.I.D's Kick in the Head right here on Live Audio Wrestling, The Law. And my guest this week, maybe you don't know the first name, but you should know the last name, no doubt about it. If you know anything about your history of professional wrestling, you know the name Bullwhip Johnson. Danny Johnston is a guy that I met years and years ago before he passed. And I mean, one hell of a guy. One hell of a guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him through my trainer, Johnny K9, and joining me now, his son, who has a book coming out, who is actually a book out, I should say, Eric Johnson. Eric, thanks for joining us this week. How you doing, brother?
Oh, this is great. I didn't know that you got trained by K9. That's great. That's I got a
Yeah,
lot of like you. I'm sure you have. I have a lot of Johnny K9 stories, and I was just a kid, and they're all in the book actually to early pitch the book. But yeah, it's that's great. Every time I hear Johnny K9's name, I just start popping. I love that guy so much.
it was funny. My first day meeting him for training, and he said because I'm 6'4", 260 pounds at the time. And he says to me, where do you come from? What do you know? Let's see how tough you are. Bam. Punches me right square in the mouth. Like, that was my first meeting with him. It was one of those, like, I'm a full grown man at the time. I'm not a child or anything, and I'm like, am I going to fight this guy right now? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? But I understand the business, and I understand where it was from. And it was absolutely insane. And your dad very much cut from that same mold, that old school wrestler mentality. Tell me what prompted you to write the book, first of all. Let's get into that.
Yes, so it's been quite a journey. Obviously, growing up in the circus, so to speak, born into the industry, and having this crazy childhood, and having all these stories, like K9 coming by, and it's all in the book. But there, K9 came by, and our backyard got broken into. And while we were away on vacation, anyways, we come back, we see the backyard's broken into. My mom has to file a police report to go through the insurance, so we had to call the cops. At the same time, Johnny K9, he's out on bail, and he came by our house for a visit. And at the same time, one of the cops, Hamilton Police, showed up and saw K9's bike in our driveway. Now, this guy had just blown up a police station in Sudbury, Ontario. So the cop thought it was like a setup. He thought it was like, hey, come to this house in the suburbs, and then he walks in and gets, shot in the back of the head like Goodfellas. So they called a SWAT team to our house. There was the big SWAT vans and 8 cop cars, and they're digging through our house and going through. And Johnny just came by for a cup of coffee, and he's just sitting there. And he goes, "How's it going, officer? How's it going?" And he's sitting there drinking a coffee. So this is my childhood. This is the life I was born into. This is the life I grew up with. And I had all these stories that I was telling with friends, or anytime I go to a wrestling event, and anyone who knew my dad and knew K9 and knew Harry D and all those guys. And it was actually Greg Oliver, legendary Canadian sports writer, obviously Slam Wrestling and all the books he's written. He approached me and said, "Hey, there's a book here if you're interested." He goes, "I know so much about your grandfather. I know so much about your dad. I worked with your dad, and I interviewed him a few times for Dewey Robertson's book and stuff." He goes, "I have all this background information. And now I'm seeing your rise in show business as an actor and as a stand-up comic, as a professional MC." And he goes, "If we just piece this together, we've got a book." So what Greg Oliver did, and he had an assistant by the name of Joe Casharo. They went in and they handled the who, what, where, when, why, who happened, who booked it, what was their name, what was their gimmick, what city was it in, and there he is, Harry D.
I had to go to school to learn how to fucking turn the phone on.
Hot intro. He's hot.
Oh man! Ring the bell.
But anyway, so Greg, went through and did all this research. So he writes the first half of every chapter, handles all the information. And then the second half of every chapter is called Eric's Bull. And it's my experience with it. What my experience was like with Johnny K9 coming by, or with the Bushwhackers swimming in our pool, and being at all the indie shows every weekend. And it's just kind of my experience and my point of view. So we put those two together, and we have a book, and it's 270 pages. So that's how we got there.
That's insane. I mean, the fact that, like, you hear the stories, and obviously there's got to be so much more to the life right? Because there's a family outside of what anybody knows inside of the ring. You know what I mean? And what you see with the performers and what you see with the wrestlers and what you see on the road. But there's also a family life outside of that. They have to go home to somebody. There's a wife, there's kids, hopefully. And the fact that, like, I've met your dad a couple of times early on in my career, right? Always fantastic human being to me, 100%. I'm interested. You said that the Bushwhackers swimming in the pool. I can only imagine the mayhem that those two idiots would have caused in your backyard. and trust me, I love them to death. Don't get it twisted. But so like, what's it like when you're growing up and you have to tell your friends who your dad is and who he hangs out with?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty evident in our neighborhood. My dad was a local celebrity, especially in Stony Creek in the Hamilton area, and him and Harry used to run all the shows at the Kiwanis Club in the East End of Hamilton, and they did a bunch of shit. So everyone kind of knew my dad already. There was times, like I wrote in the book, where I was the wrestler's kid, and I always won the "my dad can beat up your dad" arguments on the playground. And if kids ever, I had a kid shoot on me in grade 2 because I wore an NWO T-shirt to school, and he actually broke my collarbone. And then my dad showed up to pick me up from school, and he gets out of his big truck, and he's standing there, and he's waving me over, and he made sure the whole school could see that Bullwhip was my dad. And it would be hilarious, my dad coming to parent-teacher interviews and stuff like that, and he'd be wearing his own Bullwhip shirt, and he lived his, a lot of guys live their gimmick, and I think my dad lived the celebrity side of his gimmick, but him being a heel, in the stage, out there on the, in the ring, he was a heel, but I would say my dad was like a funny heel. You know what I mean? Almost like the Stone Cold Rock style heel, where it was very heely, and he did some dirty stuff, and he always got disqualified using the whip and stuff like that. But he was funny. He always made the audience laugh. He always made the crowd laugh. So he was very much just the funny guy, but the opposite of living his gimmick is he was so nice to everyone. He was so generous with everyone. He helped Harry break into the business. He helped so many wrestlers break in and gave a lot of them their first shots, and a lot of them, made sure that they got paid properly and all that kind of stuff, even when he wasn't making any money. I remember I wrote in the book, I remember at times specifically, I was standing at the cash out box with him, and he paid Steve Oceanside in a mitt full of rolled up quarters. And it was like $50 on top of what he was already paying him, but he gave it to him in quarters. And, my dad always say, the bull never stiffs nobody. Bull never stiffs nobody. And even if he didn't make any money. So, that translating into the community, into the people around us, and having Johnny Canine come by the pool or by the house and in the pool, and Farmer Pete was always around, and as a kid I didn't know that other kids just didn't have midgets at their house every day. I just didn't know that. It was just part of my life. You know what I mean? Like I would go, I'm like, so did you guys have the Bushwhackers and midgets at your pool this weekend? But I remember specifically the Bushwhackers because they came in when they were trying to bring back the ICW in the late 90s, in 98, 99, and they booked the Bushwhackers to come in, and they were staying somewhere, a hotel in Hamilton, whatever. But then my dad said, hey, I got a pool. You guys should come by for some beers. My dad always had a cooler full of beer. So they came by, and I remember I'll never forget it. We did a whirlpool in the pool. We had a big above ground circular pool, and the guys were going through the whirlpool doing their gimmick as they're going around the waves. It was crazy. I totally remember that. So yeah, I just had a different childhood than everybody else, but it helped make me the man and entertainer and worker that I am today. So I value it so much. There was never any problems. I mean, even when Johnny Canine had the cops at our house, it was still funny. We all laughed about it after. You know what I mean? It was never that sad or angry or anything like that.
Harry, tell me about the first time you met Bullwhip Johnson.
First time I met Bullwhip Johnson was at the Chin Picnic. I was with Jumpin' Jay, and they were all sitting in the picnic area where Tony would have the guys. Tony used to, not to veer off there, Tony used to take care of the guys quite a bit, and he'd had a section where he'd give the boys at the time free barbecue, free beers. So everybody was kind of in the picnic area, and I went over there, and that's where I got introduced to the crew by Jumpin' Jay, and Danny just happened to be there. We were talking and found out he was a Hamilton guy, and then just meeting him in the local shows after that. I believe the next time I seen him after that was for a Nick DiCarlo show. Actually, I'm sorry, that Nick DiCarlo show was prior to the Chin Picnic, before I was actually introduced to him. It was on Queen Street. I don't recall the name of the hall, but they used to run there at one time, and Nick DiCarlo was there. He had that show, and Danny was on the show. Ocean, the Canadian Giant, and a bunch of them. And I got to meet them. That was the first time I actually got to meet the local crew there. And then when we were at the Chin Picnic, I recognized that I had already met him and a few of the other guys. And we talked from there. And then lo and behold, shortly after that, they jerked the curtain and let me in.
And then there you were, turning a blind eye for all the shenanigans, and then still disqualify everything the guy does for you. You disqualify him match after match after match.
Oh no, I let him use the whip all the time. I just pretended like I didn't see it. Yeah, he was awesome. I worked with him outside of actually reffing him as well. I worked at the group home with him as well, so we were actually shift partners. So we spent a lot of time together. Like we'd be at the group home. Basically, instead of taking care of the kids, letting the kids listen to us set the show up. We would spend hours. We're going to do this. We're going to have the kids help us poster. Take the kids to the Kiwanis Club, and we'd use it as an outing. But we would poster the whole street and get the building all set up for free using the kids.
That's amazing.
You're teaching them life skills, but you're putting them to work. That sounds exactly like something my dad would do.
Oh, he was awesome. I mean, like our night shifts was always wrestling. Like it would always be VHS tapes of different events or whatever, and all the kids loved it, right? I mean, the kids were all 99% of them would have been wrestling fans, so they could relate with any of the stories that Dan would tell or I was telling, and we would sit there and have big bonfires and listen to Dan tell stories, and he was always like the center of attention. He always had, and it didn't matter what story he was telling, everybody would listen because you knew they were always good.
Eric, did you ever have a moment as a kid and being the child of a professional wrestler? At what point did the curtain have to get pulled back for you, or did it ever get pulled back for you?
Yeah, it was interesting for me because I always understood that it was a business, right? And I always understood that, I didn't necessarily know that maybe the matches were predetermined. I remember being mad every time my dad would use the whip. Like, because I'd be like, you were winning. Like, you could have gone over clean. And then you fucked it all up. Like, I remember being, 7, 8 years old and being mad that he got disqualified. Later years, you learn, that's how the way the match was supposed to go. And as much as Harry didn't want to disqualify him, he had to. That was how the program was going. But, for me, the biggest thing for me was the injuries. I wrote in the book, my job when my dad came home from the road my job was to rub A535 on his back all the time. Because he was a big man. He was 6'5", 275, right? So he was like a big canvas. And I said, I wrote in the book, I was like a cabana boy, but my hands were numb. Because I always was rubbing A535 on him. And he'd be covered in bruises. And, the time that Angelo Mosca Jr. broke his ribs and, all that stuff. That was real. To me, that was the realest part of wrestling. Because, I'd see him hobbling around the house and I'd see him trying to shake it off. Because he... when he wasn't working the ring, he was working regular jobs. He was driving truck. He's working at the group home. He's doing landscaping. He's doing asphalt. He's doing snow removal. So, he'd get up from a weekend of matches where they were Ajax or, Kingston, wherever they were. And then Monday morning, he was back to work. And I remember him just, he would always try to no-sell everything, that he was never hurt. But I knew he was hurt, even as a kid, he'd always say to me, boy, you can't hurt the body of a wrestler. You can't hurt the body of a wrestler. And, and that was that. But then, again, there'd be him and K9 I knew were best friends. I knew they were best friends because K9, when he wasn't in jail, he was at our house almost every day. And then, and then they would be working against each other and pretending to hate each other. So in that way, I knew, I'm like, no, they're actually buddies. They're just doing a show, in that way. But I thought, a lot of the moves and the punches and again, was all real, which it is in many ways, especially how stiff my dad worked. Ricky Johnson still tells stories about how stiff my dad was, and everybody. He used to beat the shit out of everybody. He was stiff because my dad didn't have much. He was an athlete, but he didn't go. He never went to the top rope. He never did any high spots. So his style was that brawler style. So it was always big, elbows across the back and all kinds of shit.
He did do a couple spots, but then when he did them, he'd say to me, he goes, I only do them for certain people. Well, right after he did, I look at him, I go, fuck, that was pretty good. Yeah, only for certain people.
I guess the people who pay the most, he gets the highest spots.
Right. But, you also got to remember, it was a time when there wasn't high spots being done. Like that style of wrestling wasn't a thing. It wasn't until like later on after, because especially he would have learned from your grandfather, and there was no freaking spots being done back then. It was kick, punch, headlock, takeover was a finishing move. You know what I mean? For the longest time back then. So the character of your dad was able to shine even more, I think, right? Because it wasn't like, oh, that guy who does the inverted 450 screw job, whatever the fucking thing is. You know what I mean? Like that's not a thing. But you knew when the big guy came down to the ring and he had that whip with him. You knew when Tiger Jeet Singh was swinging that sword through the crowd. You knew when these guys were around. As soon as they would come out and you were like, I'm gonna back the F up. You know what I mean? Like that was the kind of command that your dad had as far as the crowd goes. Then back behind the curtain, completely different guy.
Oh yeah. Even I knew that.
Guy,
And it was funny because he was old school, and I remember specifically a time they were working out in Paris, Ontario, or something, a big potato patch or whatever they were doing, who knows. And I remember we'd always travel up to the shows together. I'd be in the car with me, my mom, my sister, my dad, the weekend trips and stuff. And I remember we'd get there, and we'd have the whole car right up there, and then he'd get out of the car, or he'd let us out of the car. And then he'd pull up, and then once he got out of the car and he was on the area where the event was, he no longer knew us. I was no longer his son. I was no longer my mom was no longer his wife. He was Bullwhip. He lived his gimmick where anyone could see him. If a ticket taker saw him, he'd have a whip in his hand. You know what I mean? And then I remember being his kid, not understanding. I'd be like, Dad, and he'd be like, kayfabe. He'd kind of shove me away, and I couldn't understand. And then I went, oh, he's at work right now. This is his work, and then we'd all be back in the car, and then it'd be like, all right. Then we talked about our favorite parts of the match, and then they would just talk about regular life. So my mom would be like, pork chops are on sale, and we got to go get those on Tuesday if we want to eat those on Wednesday. Like it would just be right back to normal work. Like we're that normal life. We're like the Griswolds all over again. But when he was at anywhere on the premise, it was the premises, he was Bullwhip. And, that was, and except for his buddies backstage and Harry and all those guys. And, the thing that excites me the most, which makes me laugh so much, is the stuff that he would say to Harry while he was working in the ring. Because he was really
fucking insane. He was insane.
And Harry could tell some, but it was just, I always find that so interesting because you could never tell he was talking, but you would see Harry, just his shoulders were going because he's trying not to laugh. But like Harry, what was kind of some of the things he said to you?
You name it. Like he would carry a lot of stuff. Like we might have been working together at the group home the day before, so he might be carrying some shit over from that day. And he liked to always use this one line. He'd look for somebody with a giant nose, and I don't know why. And he'd say to me, "Oh, look at the chick in the front nose! What a fucking podoodless on her!" And I'd just be like, "Oh." I'd be checking his boot, and he'd be like fucking saying shit like that, and he'd look at that asshole over there, or, I mean, just making fun of the audience and doing everything. And in hindsight, now it would be more so, I think, to calm himself down.
Yeah.
Before the match. That was his way of kind of winding down, and he would like kind of, here, you deal with it kind of thing. Try and get me to crack up or whatever. And again, even with him too, I know, and I can't remember which actual show it was, but there's a couple videos where I get him back, and his actual Eric will remember this. All you hear is the ha ha, and then he'll turn away because I cracked him back, right? So he was great. Or even the times when he was mad, he wouldn't even get mad. He'd try and make it funny, like. There was a time where we were at Jumpin' Jay's gym, and he was wrestling against this guy who was like a Ultimate Warrior knockoff, big muscle guy, and he was shit, but he was who Whip was working with, and he's telling me to ring the fucking bell. This guy's green like his fucking makeup, and he's just punching like the makeup up again. And I'm trying so hard not to laugh, like. And yeah, I mean, he would do shit like that all the time, but that was just him being bull. Like when that match when Mosca broke his ribs, that, that was at the Boys and Girls Club, and if I recall correctly, Whip grabbed uh, Mosca Jr.'s arms, and Jet Star grabbed the whip, and he popped him. And I didn't actually see him connect and hit the tooth, but from where I was, I could tell that looked like it was stiff. And what I could tell was when I realized that what had happened was Mosca's reaction, because then he looked down, and when he looked up, he was missing his front chiclet, right? So, and he was hot, and we work with Ange too. Ange worked for the same company in another facility, so we are all like friends outside of work as well. And this is Ange Jr.'s first match in a million years, like since he was with the NWA, I think, or even when he was working with Bearman and stuff before he had retired. So we had coaxed him into coming back. So, you know, it was a big deal to have him on the card, and his old man was there too. And he went to the back. He was so pissed off. And Whip looks at me and goes, "Here, tell him to come back out here. Come back out. The crowd's hot." And I'm like, okay. So I walk in the dressing room, and I open the door, and Mosca's just fucking on fire, right? And I says, "Edge, Whip wants you to come back out and do something." And fuck that! I'm not fucking going out there. He's just going crazy. So I come back out, and I go, "Yeah." He says, "Did you tell him?" I said, "Yeah, he told me to tell you to fuck off. He's not coming back out." Okay, well, that fucks that spot up. That was basically it. You know, yeah, he was awesome. He'd make light of whatever. I mean, you can't really do anything to change it. He would always, I mean, he was always serious, but he wouldn't let shit like that hold him back. The match still has to go on. We still got to give everybody their money's worth, and he'd do what he can to, you know, to make it work. Just like that time he knocked that mask off the kid. You know?
Oh yeah, Ian Hacker. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Ian W. Hacker.
Yeah.
Remember, because that was the thing, and we would always bug him. It's like, wait a second, your name is Ian Whacker? What the fuck kind of name is this, kid? Yeah. Oh, I'll never forget that.
He's messaged me a couple times over the years when different posts come online or whatever about that show, and he was good about it. I mean, I didn't even know what to do. I mean, he hit him so hard his mask fell off. I just threw his mask back to him. What the fuck? Here, put it back on. I don't know. What are we going to do here? Like, hide your face, you know?
I remember what I did. I was backstage because we were waiting because that was that Hamilton show or whatever, right? At
Hamilton Convention Center. Yeah, May 1st, 1999.
Unbelievable. I was on that show, and I remember being backstage and laughing my ass off because Green Kid Ian didn't know what to do. You could tell at some point Danny was just getting more and more pissed at this guy as the second wore on.
Stiff. So stiff.
Oh yeah, that video is crazy. That video, someone put it on YouTube recently. I watch it often because technically I call that my dad's last match ever, but then I found a video of him wrestling in Ajax the night after on May 2nd, but there was nobody there. It doesn't really count for me because so May 1st, we were all there, my entire family. My mom brought a bunch of people from the bank where she was working, and you know, it felt like the entire east end of Hamilton was there. Even though the event didn't sell out, it wasn't crazy, but everyone pushed up to the front. It looked good. They filmed it. He had that heat with Bubba O'Neill, who I see all the time, Bubba, with all my stuff at CH and stuff. But, you know, watching that, it was a squash. Like, my dad beat the shit out of him. That Ian Hacker didn't get a single piece of offense in. My dad didn't let him look good at all. He just squashed him, bulldogged him, pinned him, and then cut a promo and got the fuck out of Dodge. It was the best thing.
I can let you in on something. That was basically how he called the match in the back before he went out. Yep. What are we doing? He's not getting fuck all. Okay.
Yep. I remember us all standing around and hearing that, and Johnny was there. He's like, "Don't you give that kid a goddamn thing." He's like, "Don't worry, I ain't giving him nothing."
He gave him nothing but a bunch of stiff shots. That's what he gave him.
He hits him across the back with a forearm at one point. It's like Harry when he hit you. You thought his arm was going to come out your chest after he hit you on the back.
We're at the group home one day, and he's trying to break in. Remember Paul Markowski?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Big Paul. Paul was a power lifter. Like I'd say 6'1", 6'2", and a solid 250, and always in shape. And he did a lot of asphalt work with Whip on the side, so they were together all the time. So Whip's, trying to brainwash him to break him in the business. So we're out at the side of the group home by the pond one time. He goes, "Oh, it don't hurt," and he takes me over and turns me around. So he wants to show Markowski. He says, you hit him with the meat part of your forearm, you're kind of protecting the guy. He goes, "I'll show you." And he hit me in the back of the fucking shoulder blades. I'm telling you, I could have took fingerprints from my chest. Just fucking. Oh, and I'm looking at him, and it hurts so much I couldn't even tell him to fuck off. Like I'm like, he's like, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "Oh," I'm thinking to myself, well, no wonder everybody fucking bitches when you hit them. Like, holy Christ,
Yeah, and you weren't nearly as jacked as you are now, Harry. And you're half a fucking bullwhip size.
He killed me. But to be honest with you, other than not being able to breathe, and there's no way by my facial reaction he couldn't tell. I pretended like, "Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah. It killed me.
Eric, what's your biggest memory of your dad?
Yeah, I mean, I remember two versions of my dad. I remember Bullwhip and I remember Dan. And my dad was my hero, still is my hero. If you know me and follow me, you know that my entire kind of brand is that I'm Bullwhip's son. But this book has really helped me kind of step out of that shadow. I wrote in the book, I said, I feel like I've been living in the shadow of a man who hasn't cast a shadow in 20 years. The way I deal with the fact that my dad is gone is because the way I do it is some people don't do it. Some people, you hear their dad passes away and you don't even know. They don't even talk about it. And not that they had bad blood or anything with their dad. That was just part of their life, and they've moved on from that part of their life. Right. I made a promise to my dad on his deathbed that I was going to speak his name every day and said I was going to keep your name alive. And now I've journeyed into show business, and I've really made that my whole gimmick. My whole gimmick is that. So in that way, I'm constantly remembering my dad. I'm constantly bringing him up. I'm constantly, with all my merch is about his stuff. I got the Bulls Gym t-shirts and stuff. And, that way I keep those memories alive. So they're always constant. So it's hard to find one, you know what I mean? But I think my biggest wrestling memory of him was that match we were just talking about with Ian Hacker. Because if it was 1999, I was 9 years old. I'm old enough to be smart enough to the business, but I'm still young to have the little magic around it. Everybody was there, and it was a squash match, and he beat the shit out of this guy and proved that he was the strongest guy, and he was the best wrestler in town, and he was there to prove it. And, he had taken some time off because he had some health issues, so then he came back, and, he was tanned, and he was jacked, and he shaved the head, and he had the whips. He looked good. He sounded good. He was good on the mic. So that is my favorite, live memory. And then the memories I have of more current stuff is I can find stuff online. Like when I found all those matches of him working for International with Bill Irwin as the Long Riders, when I found those on YouTube, I started to bawl because I'd never seen those before. It's like I'm creating new memories, that some guy filmed and put on YouTube, and it's terrible quality, and it cuts out halfway, and it gets all scrambled, and there's a promo they're doing. You can see that Whip's trying to get his promo in, but Bill Irwin's taking the mic, and you can see my dad trying to get in, and all those things are like memories that existed a long time ago, but they're new memories for me because now I'm finding them and now I'm discovering them. And, with the process of writing the book, too, with Greg, like he's telling me stories where I'm listening to, because Greg recorded every interview, and he interviewed everybody, all my dad's friends, all the old wrestlers, Ricky Johnson, Farmer Pete, obviously Harry, and to listen back, it's like I'm reliving it, through the stories of other guys, and some stories I've never heard before. I mean, I thought I knew everything about my dad. I thought I had heard everything, seen everything, heard every story, and I had maybe 10% of it. And getting that new information while doing this book has been life-changing, and it's now my time to step out of the shadow and create my own world and my own reality and my own, business, because my career's taken off. All my shows are selling out. I'm touring all across Canada. I'm on TV shows. I'm on morning TV. Now it's my time to create these memories that I can give to my kid, which we're trying to have now. So, you know what I mean? It's just like that whole cyclical, beautiful thing, and I'm the most at peace with this story right now. You know, I struggled for many, many years losing my dad. And now that the book is out and my career's taken off and I have the relationships with people like Harry and even Farmer Pete, that asshole, you know what I mean? I to have the to have those relationships now and to be, you know, healing for someone like Harry. You know, when I see Harry and he sees me, we both pop. We both fight up because we are both living in this, hey, we're now our worlds are together. And that is the most special thing for me of all of this, you know, is to be Bullwhip's son who's doing his own thing, but still gets to live the life that his dad lived. And that is, again, I gave you a very long answer to a very short question, but I have a lot to say about this because it's just so fucking important to me. And yeah.
But see, your story actually started a long time ago, and the correlation between like wrestling wasn't just the fact that you are the son of a wrestler.
Yeah.
Stuff that you've done in your past, like for example, working on Splat-A-Lot.
Yeah.
One of the guys you work with on Splat-A-Lot happens to be a good friend of mine and everybody in the wrestling business. AEW, you know, now AEW superstar one RJ City.
Yeah.
You know, you guys kind of, so like everybody forgets that the world isn't that big. It really isn't. And when you look at the wrestling business part of the world, it gets even smaller.
Yeah.
I've said this to Harry before, is the fact that like he needs to sit down someday and write a book about the people that he's been in there with, because every wrestler only gets to be in there with one person throughout the night, maybe 3 other people if they're in a tag match throughout the night. Harry's been in there with everybody. And Harry's probably got more dirt on all of these guys. That's why I stopped talking to this. That's why I stopped talking to this prick. Because
Dude, I can make Vince McMahon look like an angel right now with the stories I know. Legit.
Same amount of shit.
Can I add something to what Eric was saying? So
please.
I recall vividly, and I can take you to the spot in his parents' living room, exactly to that spot where I was there with Jumpin' Jay. On more than one occasion, we're going, and Eric would have like all his wrestling figures, right? And Bull would always tease him because Jay and I would always be smoking, and Bull never did. So we'd always say something, and like if we fucked something up, Dan would look at us and say, "Don't drop the pipe." Oh, did you forget the pipe? Did you? You know. So all of a sudden, Eric would come up to me and Jay. You guys smoke a Rodney, and we'd be like, "Oh my god!" And he's like 3, 4 years old. So his dad would say to me, "Because you know, Harry, this kid's gonna be a stand-up comedian," and he would go into this routine, and he would do like comedy and TV from long before Eric was ever, like he would be doing Humphrey Bogart and doing imitations and stuff. So he'd go to, and I remember he was saying he'd be at a family party and Eric would be the center of attention, putting on a show for everybody. And again, he was maybe 3 years old. And I vividly remember his old man saying, "This kid's going to be a stand-up comedian." And when we connected, that's the very first thing I said to him. I said, "Man, your old man hit that like right on the head. It was perfect." And he was right.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, when the apple fell from the tree, it fell straight down. And you know, I could have easily, and if I was interested, and I still am, I still lust over the idea of becoming a wrestler. Every time I'm close to a wrestling ring, I look at it and I go, "Ooh, yeah, I should start training. I gotta get in there. You know, even if I just work one match, I'll do one. It'll be in Hamilton. Harry can ref it, then he can retire. The old bastard. He can finally be done with the whole thing." And,
hey,
you know,
you do that, I'm good with hanging them up.
So, you know, I think about that often, but, you know, was stand-up comedy destined for me? Maybe. Did I make the choice to go out and chase it? Yes. But, you know, stand-up comedy wasn't always in the plan. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a film actor. I went to film school to become a film actor, and it was when I was in film school, I signed up for my very first open mic on November 1st, 2010, and I have not stopped since. Now I do over 150 shows a year, travel from, you know, all over North America, performed at the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store. I've opened for Russell Peters. I've opened for Sebastian Maniscalco. I do all my own headlining tours. I'm about to do 75 across Canada. You know what I mean? And they're all going to be sold out. I already know some of them might struggle. Some of the small towns, actually, some of the big towns might struggle because I always sell out small towns. My dad always used to say, you know, it's easy to sell out when you're the only thing happening in town. And, you know, so I've made this decision and it's working. And I have all of these stories. I talk about my dad on stage. I talk about my childhood on stage, and and I have so much perspective. So yeah, it was, you're born into it, but you make the decision. And I've really gone for it. And I've gone for it to the level that my dad went for it with wrestling. Like, my dad didn't make it to the level he wanted, but he fucking went for it. And that is the most important thing for me, because I watched my dad go for it and somewhat fail, and it crushed him. So for me, I'm going for it, and failure's not an option. No matter what it takes. I don't have the same problems my dad had with alcohol and addiction and mental health. I don't have that, thank God. But that's the only thing that would slow me down, and I don't have that. So I'm gonna make it. I'm going over. I know for a fact I'm going over. I'm doing a little bit at a time in different shows in different places, but I intend on being the biggest comic in the world. And I'm not going to stop until I'm there. So, that's my big come to Jesus speech at the end here. But I actually have no idea how long this thing is. But yeah, that's what I mean.
Have you ever taken a bump, Eric? In the ring?
Actually, yeah, not in the ring, but I did an episode of Tales from the Territories, and I'm working with Evan and the guys from Dark Side of the Ring, and it was really great experience. And actually, the day I filmed was July 20th, which was my dad's death anniversary. That just happened to be the day they had me on set. Anyway, so I was playing a biker, Frank Dillinger of the Chain Gang, and I took a huge bump. With a pool cue supposed to be across the back, but the guy missed his spot and hit me right in the back of the head and broke a pool cue over the back of my head. And it was rigged, but it was rigged just with super glue, so it was still a very active pool cue. Actually, if you go to to click on Tales of the Territory on Bell 5 TV, the screen grab is me getting hit in the back of the head with that pool cue. And, I worked with Santino on a couple occasions, and the Japanese wrestler that he works with, I can't remember his name right now, and he did a hip toss on me, and I took it like a champ. Even Santino went, "Wow, you took that really well." He goes, "You got that bred into you." I had my feet up, had my hands down when I hit, and he goes, "You train?" I go, "No, I've never trained before." He goes, "Well, you got it in you. You took that bump like a champ." And so I've taken a couple, but we'll see. Well, I might take many more. I don't know. Who knows?
Just give him the same answer your dad did. I only do it for certain people.
Exactly. I only do it when the pay's there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Trust me. After 26 years of doing it myself, I took definitely far too many fucking bumps.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, you crazy bastard.
Eric, the book is out, right?
Yep.
Where can everybody get a hold of this thing?
So it's available on Amazon. It's called Run With... Actually, here, I'll show your viewers. It's called Run With the Bull, 3 Generations of Sports and Entertainment, written by Eric Johnston, Greg Oliver, and Joe Casharo. It's available on Amazon, and it's doing really well on Amazon, but now I'm shifting my focus to sell physical copies at shows, at wrestling events, at book signings. I'm setting up a thing at Indigo, chapters here in Hamilton. It's going into libraries. I've been really pushing it to do alternative stuff other than Amazon, because to be honest, Bezos is taking a big cut of this book. You know what I mean? Like, it's $25. I see $4 of every purchase. Right. You know what I mean? So it's I'm now, if I have the physical copies, I can sell them for a higher amount and make some more money. But really, I'm just happy to get the story out there. Anyone who's read this book fucking loves it, and they don't even have to be connected to the story to love it. I have people who have bought in the book who didn't know my dad, aren't wrestling fans, but they just knew me or know me and my journey, and they said it's one of the most beautiful things they've ever read in their life. Because I don't shy away from anything. I talk about wrestling, I talk about alcoholism, I talk about losing a parent, I talked about my struggles, my journeys into show business. It's all there. It's all there. I didn't leave anything out. I didn't shy away from anything. And that's the way I wanted to do it. So that's why I think people are responding it, because the truth in any business is what's going to rise to the top. The truth is always going to be, the best gimmicks are based on truth. The best things are based on truth. And the book is all true. There's not one bullshit line in this entire book. I mean, maybe some of the stuff my dad said, but other than that, it's all there.
That's amazing. And if people want to, because you're to find out what shows you're going to be out, to find out where they can find these physical copies, if they don't want to give Bezos any of that money, how can they get a hold of you?
So everything is very simple. It's Eric Johnston Who. Eric with a C, Johnston with a T, WHO. That's my website. That's my Instagram. That's my Facebook. You go to my website. You go to Stand Up. You'll see all my upcoming tour dates, and I've got about 75 of them on the books right now. I got 2 shows tonight. You know what I mean? So I'm just going to be out there and working the road for the next 3 months, and then come home and hopefully take the summer off. And me and Harry will be floating in my pool smoking Rodneys. That's the plan.
We don't need to wait for your pool for that, kid.
Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed the weather outside. It's already very nice even this time of year. And of course, the hustle never ends. I mean, as we see right now, Harry on his way to a show, I would assume, right now.
Actually, my apologies to you guys, because when you see me moving around a little while ago, I literally had to sneak up and punch out of work without them knowing I was leaving. So, yeah, I'm on my way to a Oshawa for a Destiny show, and I believe Eric's going to be doing selling books at the Destiny show in Mississauga next month, Eric?
Yeah, whatever. I don't even know what the date is, but March something.
I can double check. Yeah,
March 3rd. Sunday, March 3rd. I will
Yep.
be selling books and signing books at the Destiny show at the Don Kolov Arena.
Correct.
Amazing. And Harry, no, I mean, not that people care about getting a hold of you, but if they want to.
Can I add one quick Bullwhip story before we
Please.
Sure,
Absolutely.
please.
This isn't one that a lot of people know, but the second WCW Legend show, like the first one, Whip worked with K9. Okay, that was Dan's last big arena show, and K9's as well, and that was the Hamilton boys. Like we were like having fun because we knew that we were only there because of Tony Parisi. Let's be realistic, but the look in his eye, like that night, like I said, I mean, he was definitely in his element. They were having fun. We were in Buffalo, War Memorial Auditorium the first year. And when we came out, like I had done the match with the Link before, but when I got to come out with Dan and K9, it was a little bit different. Like I said, I even had to take a second to catch my breath. You know what I mean? Like they say, smell the roses while you go out and stuff like that. It was like, I kept saying, like, it was one of those, I can't fucking believe I'm here. You're looking around, right? Well, we went out, and you know the way your dad was. I said to him, I go, bro, there's fucking Jim Kelly sitting in the front row. And he just looks at me, goes, oh, Harry, follow me. And I just fucking go out of the ring. And there's Dan, goes up to the front row and starts chirping Jim Kelly, who immediately on cue stands up and wants to go. So K9 comes running over, and I'm holding him back. And I look up, and all I can see is me, K9, Whip, Jim Kelly on the jumbo screen. And I said to K9, and to your dad, don't move. He goes, why? I said, we're on the big screen. So you fucking Mark. So we're fighting back and forth, right? And we had a blast. We laughed. That's the story where when we come back, Johnny was retarded at the border. Well, we went back to the next year. I want to fast forward. Dan had come because there was no match, but he was being honored as one of the in-ring legends. And he said to me, and you know your dad doesn't like taking pictures, right? Like with other wrestlers and stuff. That he was old school. Like I actually had my camera in the dressing room and got a picture with him and Bruno Sammartino and with K9 too, because they would not have asked. But when I said you guys want a picture, they were both, and you can tell by the look in both their eyes, they were like, a kid meeting Santa Claus, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when he said to me, Harry, do me a favor, do you mind taking my picture when I'm in the ring? Because they were giving him a little plaque. I was like honored, because I knew these guys don't take pictures. They used to give me shit for wanting to take pictures. These guys don't take pictures, right? So I took that picture for him. Well, when we were in the back and I had my match, and like you said before, your dad was like one of the main reasons that I got in this business, and at the beginning helped me more than anybody else. And he said, we're in the back, and you know who Gary Jester is?
I don't know.
Ted, he was an office guy for WCW, WWE.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So he had come up to me after my match, and I had just finished working with Dory Funk and Greg Valentine, Brito, and Parisi, and I'm sitting down kind of just like taking it all in, and he walked up. I was there with your dad, and he walked up. He said to me, he goes, do me a favor, don't get changed. We're going to need you to do another match. He walked out the door. And I remember your dad saying to me, "See, that's exactly how it fucking happens. Just because we are here, we got to thank Parisi." And like I said, I can hear him saying that now. Like it was like pretty cool. So
Yeah.
that's one of those ones that I don't tell very many people that one, but he was fucking such a good guy to so many people, like you said, right?
Yeah.
So when Eric said he was doing that book, it was like it was like if I was to go back, at that time when he was 3, and you were to say to me, the kid's gonna write a book about his dad, I would have said, yeah, I believe you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not that I'm happy, but I wasn't surprised. But it's such a good story, and the way he tells it, it's like you can't not like it. You don't have to be a wrestling fan. You just if everybody's part of a family, that's a family story. It just happens that wrestling and comedy's part of it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
for myself, here's one of the things, and I love reading history on wrestling, especially. Like, like I never knew Bearman, right? But Drawing Heat is such a fantastic book to read. So I can only imagine, it all comes from that same kind of era. What do you
Yeah.
think your dad would have said to you, Eric, if you told him, I'm going to write a book about you?
Oh fuck! Well, he would have tried to kayfabe his emotions about it, but I know he'd be really excited. I know, like I remember I was in grade 2 or 3, and we had public speaking. We had you do a speech and you present it to the school, and it goes to different levels, and you compete against all the other grades and blah 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 blah. And I did my speech on my dad, the wrestler. And I remember him and I sat in our living room, and he just started listing names, locations, injuries, high spots, low spots. He talked about Japan. He talked about everything. That's the biggest thing is I think when my dad realized that his career was coming to an end, I think it affected him badly. I think he wasn't ready to be done. But I also think that he got excited to put other people over and impart that wisdom. He loved, breaking in new guys. He loved breaking in new refs like Harry, but I remember him being so excited when Edge, Christian, and Val Venus all came through the Kiwanis Club. And he was, helping putting them over. I write about that in the book as well, and giving them their first match in Hamilton. I remember him being really, really excited. So I think getting his story out there, even though there's bad parts of his story, which again, I don't shy away from, I think he'd be honored. I mean, I have to go see a psychic to see what he thinks about the book, but I know, man, my dad loved being over. My dad loved being the center of attention, as do I in my business and in life. And, you can't get more any center of attention. And, his biceps weren't this big. I gave him some liberties on the design.
You did so.
But
you
this,
did so. I wasn't going to say nothing.
well, this picture on the back is the perfect, the way I worked with a designer by the name of Matty Tobin, and he's like a legendary graphic designer and horror and all kinds of stuff. But me on my dad's shoulders over the smoky city of Hamilton is the complete, the whole story come together in one image, and so I think he'd be very proud. And I know he'd be very proud. So yeah.
I didn't even know that was a picture of Hamilton. I thought that was us in the shed.
You and Jumpin' Jay.
Me and Jay in the shed working on a show. Amazing.
Eric, Harry, I want to thank both of you so much for taking the time out of your schedules, to join us here on the Law of Live Audio Wrestling.
My apologies. I couldn't be in a better surrounding. I'm sorry I'm in my car, guys.
Yeah,
No,
we'll talk
that's
about
good.
that later, you piece of shit.
Hey, as long as I look good and I sound good, we're fine.
That's the main thing.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much again. Very, very appreciative. For all of you out there, go pick up this book wherever you can. If you see Eric at a show, if you find out that he's going to be in a town near you, go pick up this book, because it's stories like this, in my opinion. And like I've said this before, my goal in all of this is to allow people to tell their stories that don't normally get a chance to tell their story. And somebody like your dad is a perfect example of this. He may not be known to the casual wrestling fan today, but that doesn't make his story any less valuable for the world of professional wrestling. 100%. So thank you, Eric, for telling this story from your point of view. Obviously, you know what I mean. But it reaffirms my belief that the history of the business of professional wrestling has to be told. Because if it's not told, we're going to leave these young kids up to their own devices, and they're going to have nothing to look back on. Where did it all come from? I don't know, because apparently to some people, wrestling didn't start until 2015. Well, that's not the case. All right. So you have to go out there and you have to read these things at all costs, no matter what happens. And we're going to continuously try to figure out how we can get Harry to write a book as well. So hopefully that'll be one.
I have 7 chapters done so far.
Hey, there he is.
They all say the same fucking thing, but he has 7 chapters done so far.
They're actually on empty zigzag packs. They're just small.
7 chapters by 7 chapters. He means he's written on 7 bathroom walls at truck stops.
He's just sending smoke signals.
Yeah,
that's tremendous, guys. Thank you so much again. This is the Law Live Audio Wrestling. My T.I.D's kicking ahead. Stick right there. We're going to be right back after this to close this whole thing out.
Thanks, guys.